So I started wearing a headband, and then as time went on, the headband got thicker and thicker, and my friends and family would FaceTime call me, and I would like quick rip it off because I was afraid of what they would think about me.
Hey everyone. Today we're talking about our journey to wear head coverings for Abby and for me to not wear head coverings. About 2 years ago, a video popped up on my YouTube feed from Scroll Publishing, which talked about how a church planter was in China and he was going through 1 Corinthians 11 with his church, and they were asking him why they don't have to wear a head covering. And he was looking into the reasons why they don't have to, and he realized that they should wear a head covering, the women. And he said something that really bothered me. He said, for over 1900 years, the entire church, across all places and cultures and times, wore head coverings during prayer and prophecy. And that really bothered me. And so I talked to Abby about it, and for a few weeks I was wrestling with the whole idea. But as I was looking more into it, I realized that the issue has nothing to do with prostitution. It has nothing to do with the Corinthian culture. It's a biblical command that is related to the created order of creation, of Adam and Eve. It's the same argument made from or for the difference in roles between men and women in the church. So, talked to Abby about it, and she has her own story to share.
So Dylan came to me with this YouTube video and said, I think head covering is actually something that needs to be practiced today. And he kind of left it there and gave me space to work out my own convictions, come to the answer on my own. But he did send me this sermon. And I think along with the sermon, he sent me another clip from R.C. Sproul, who is pretty mainstream. He was on a panel with, I think, a couple other people like John MacArthur and John Piper. And the question that was asked to this panel was, are head coverings for today? And he was the only person on the panel that said, yes, I believe that head covering is for today, because the argument that Paul makes is not a cultural argument. He's making he's making an argument that's from the created order. And so hearing that, it was very disturbing. And it made me want to look into it more. So I guess for maybe a couple weeks, I was researching head covering and, like Dylan said, cult prostitutes and bald heads and all of this stuff. That's not real. Right? Just stuff that we had been told in college in our biblical studies classes. And we had just believed because we didn't know better, right? So looking into it more, yeah, I realized that this is for today, that the argument being made is from the created order. It's not from culture. It's not for bald heads. Like the passage itself debunks that. Speaking about how a woman should be shorn if she won't cover her head. So that completely destroys that argument. But anyways, researching it, and I realized, yeah, this is something that I need to do. But I wasn't happy about it. I was pretty upset for, I think, about 3 days. I didn't want to talk to anybody. Accepting the head covering would mean that I would stick out in every single church that I was a part of, because I know lots of people who love Jesus, who go to church, who don't cover their heads. And so accepting this would mean that I would be the one that would look like I was enlightened and that I got it right and everybody else was wrong. And so I was really worried about what other people would think about me. And so I didn't want to do this. And one night I was praying about it and asking God to speak to me. And that night he spoke to me in a dream. And the dream was that I had superpowers that came with the hat that I put on. And so I felt like that was the Lord speaking to me about covering my head and the power that came with it. And the verse that stuck out to me in the morning when I woke up was, "For this reason a woman should have," and a lot of translations slip in a symbol of, but in the Greek, in the original text that the Bible is written in, a symbol of, that phrase, it's not there. What the text actually says is, "For this reason a woman should have authority or power on her head because of the angels." Now, I don't really understand what that means, because of the angels, but I do understand that it's not about a symbol, it's about actually having authority and power on your head. So that was all that I needed, that dream, and just that passage sticking out to me in a new way. And then I started covering my head. Now, it wasn't like this, I don't know, it was a slow process. So I started wearing a headband, and then as time went on, the headband got thicker and thicker, and my friends and family would FaceTime call me, and I would like quick rip it off because I was afraid of what they would think about me. But I guess I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I guess I've stopped caring what people would think, and I started covering my whole head and covering it all the time, not just part of the time. I also found it terribly impractical to be going about my daily life and like wanting to pray and like, oh, where's my head covering so that I can pray. So it's just easier to keep a head covering on all the time. So I guess that's my testimony.
Yeah, we just want to end with two things. So in Luke 13:17, Jesus gives a story of, or Luke gives a story of how Jesus put to shame his opponents when he healed a woman on the Sabbath. And he explained how this is permissible. And it says, the text says he put his opponents to shame. And the same word used there is used in 1 Corinthians talking about head covering. And when we pray and prophesy without covering our heads if we're a female, or covering our heads if we're a male, we're putting Jesus to shame. And that's something that is actually a big deal. So please don't use the objection or convince yourself it's okay because it's a small thing or God cares about the heart. If God only cared about the heart, the 1 Corinthians 11 wouldn't be in there. It's a command from the Apostle Paul, and he ends the passage by saying, if anybody disagrees, they have no place in the church here. We have
there's no other practice.
Yeah, there's no other practice among the churches.
But also, I would add that, like, if it is about the heart, right, then the outward things change. Like, there can't be like, okay, I'm praying in the right spirit. It's about my heart, where my heart's at. Like, no, if it's about where your heart's at, you'd be doing it, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what, I don't know, I think about faith. Faith without works is dead. Like, show me your faith without works. I'll show you my faith by my works. But,
So we challenge you to look into this yourself, see that what we're saying is true, and start caring more about how God cares about you, how God is pleased with you, than how men are pleased with you.
Yeah. And I'd add one more thing, and it's probably something that you've all seen. I've seen it where I've grown up in central Massachusetts, that we hear a call to prayer when a church is about to pray. They'll say, okay, men, take off your hats. We're about to pray. And I would ask you, where does that come from? Where does it come from? It's from that passage, but we're not willing to follow the first part, right? That women should cover their heads, but men, yes, men should uncover their heads when they pray. So what's that about? Yeah, what's that about?
And next video, we'll talk about radical love and how the church understood that.